Bassmaster and the NPFL have recently announced their rules updates for technology of front-facing sonar, aka Livescope, and the plans for 2025 seasons and beyond. Earlier this week, NPFL announced they would be prohibiting all real-time imaging sonar units based on the follow-up interview part of their business plan going forward, since they don't really have any financial ties or partnerships with any of the big players in electronics. I think this is a pretty easy decision for them and a pretty good move for them to help them differentiate themselves from the other tournament leagues, the other big players, the other high entry fee tournament leagues. Hopefully, this makes the loudest critics and anglers happy, and the fans and anglers are all there. Our most vocal will support the MFL with their money, their entry fees, their participation, and their eyeballs. So hopefully, all the squeaky wheels in the comments will put their money where their mouth is. In the end, this gives anglers and fans options based on where they stand, what they want, how they believe fishing should be for them. It'll be interesting to watch how this unfolds going forward for the NPFL and their anglers and their fans. I'm sure both anglers and fans alike, some will leave, some will come. Only time will tell where it's going to net out for the NPFL. One last nugget on the NPFL. They said they have two more big announcements coming very soon. I'll be interested to see what those are. Are we going to see the A-Rig come back? Are we going to see more restrictions on baits? Are we going to see them open up the rules on baits? Are we going to see changes in length limits, bag limits, length of tournaments? Are they going to go to short tournament days that are easily digestible for 3 hours? Like, it'd be interesting to see if NPFL really cracks the code and does something interesting here. I want to see what they roll out. And I guess the final thing on the NPFL is, should we call NPFL? Does that stand now for No Pinging Effing Little Minnows League? I don't know. So we'll see where the NPFL goes, but I wish them well, and interesting to see how this unfolds. Then this afternoon, Bassmaster drops their bombshell. I think we kind of knew what was coming from them, but they finally released their findings and plans going forward from their 2024 tech committee that they started way back at Toledo Bend at the beginning of the year. And here's kind of the rundown of their press release. It's basically going to be limited to one single front-facing transducer. It must be mounted on a trolling motor, so no more turrets, no more live units on jack plates. It has to be on the trolling motor. Also, there's an approved and unapproved list of acceptable tech and transducers, which this list will be reviewed and updated annually. Notably, this year, 2025, or going to 2025 season, the LVS 62 is not approved for 2025. The LVS 34, the 32, Active Target 1 and 2, Humminbird Live, those are all approved units. So if something new comes out at ICAST, if there's a new unit from Garmin or Humminbird or Live 360, basically it will always be the following season. The tech committee will basically have to review that and choose to whether that's going to be added. So there won't be any surprises mid-season. There won't be any anglers be able to bring in new technology during the mid-season and change things up, which I think is good. Anglers are also going to be limited to one electric trolling motor. So this eliminates the rear power pole, anchor brakes, the crappie brakes, whatever you want to call them. Total screen size is limited to 55 inches with no limit on total units. So an angler could have 11 5-inch units or 5 11-inch units or any combination to make that up. And obviously they can be under 55 inches. Now, that's kind of the three legs of the big thing of their press release. Will this drastically change the outcome of the tournaments and the standings? I don't really think so. For the most part, the anglers that are good with the tech, the anglers that really are good with Livescope, that have made that a part of their game, will be almost as dangerous and effective. And all they need is one live transducer and probably one 9 to 10-inch unit to be effective. We'll see some small movements in the standings. We see that every year. We'll see some anglers go up, some go down. Maybe there's a few anglers down there that have 7 units on their boat and 4 Livescope units. Maybe they get reeled back in a little bit, but I don't think this is going to drastically materially change what we see in the AOI standings year over year. But I do think Bassmasters has done some good things with putting up some equipment and tech guardrails and to standardize and limit the tech so anglers don't have to choose and make decisions. And we should see a much more level playing field from that perspective. Now, some anglers may only go with 3 16-inch units. Some anglers may have, 4 12-inch units. It'll be interesting to see that. But I think it does make anglers easier to prepare for their boats, order, plan what they need to do. I don't think this all-out arms race in 2024 was good for the league. I don't think it was a good look. So I think from a perception standpoint, this is good. I think it is good to start to limit what is considered a tournament rigged bass boat at the highest level. Bass boats are outrageously expensive already. So anything we can do to kind of flatten the curve there and for anglers trying to move up and knowing what that target is and what they need to do if they want to go fish the opens and fish at the highest level, now there's a target to understand what that tech is and hopefully maybe flatten the cost a little bit of what it costs to rig a tournament bass boat. And the perception for young anglers coming up, it's a move in the right direction for sure. I like the 55-inch minimum. I would have preferred something a little closer to 50 inches. But this will likely bring many anglers from some of them, running 5 to 6 units back to 3 to 4. Obviously, not having the need for more than one Livescope unit limits the need to have more than maybe 4 screens. Be interesting to see if there's some creative things with setups. Will they actually make some decisions? Where they emphasize to put their inches, where they put the screens, or they want 2 in the back, 2 up front, 1 big one in the back, 3 up front. Anglers may have to actually just make decisions on splitting screens. They may not be able to run a dedicated unit for 360. They might have to split that with map or 2D or do different things. And I think you'll see a rise in more emphasis on adaptable mounts to be able to quickly move from perspective to front facing to down and things like that. The extra trolling motors, I really don't have a strong opinion of that. I have not used them, but I do feel like that also keeps that cost down and the cost of competition, which I think is kind of good. In the end, as long as one live transducer is available to these anglers, the schedule will be the biggest limiting factor in the use of technology. So I look forward to the 2025 Bassmaster schedule to see what they come out from a schedule, if they can mix in more natural grass lakes, if they can fish in more river and current fisheries. That will be the true test of how much Livescope or front-facing sonar really affects fishing at the Bassmaster Elite Series and the Bassmaster Classic going forward. The only thing left to see is what the MLF and BPT does with their leagues. We've probably all heard the rumors about banning Livescope in BFLs and maybe Toyotas, and maybe a mixed hybrid approach at the BPT, but there's been no official announcement. But based on everything coming on, I would assume we'll hear that soon. From a fan, it'd be interesting to see what BPT comes up with, because with their format, multiple days, zeroing and resetting the weights, it obviously gives them the biggest opportunity to do something creative with a hybrid, doing periods of, you can use it in a period, you can't use it, you can use it on a cut day, you can't use it on a day, knockout rounds, things like that. So it may be too confusing for fans, but that would be the hybrid model that a lot of people are clamoring for because of the way they do their schedule. Either way, the way this is trending, and regardless of what BPT comes up with, it sounds like the fans, the anglers will all have options going forward in 2025. And then the numbers and the stats will tell the true story in a few years. All right. What's up, everybody? That was kind of my thoughts in a nutshell. Welcome to HellaBass Live on a Wednesday night, presented by Arsenal Fishing, boosted by Powerhouse Lithium as usual. And we're going solo. So now that I kind of got my statement out of the way, I'd love to get into a discussion on everything that's going on, what you guys think, and answer any questions. As always, Arsenal Fishing has their code HellaBass15, HB10. If you want to save 10% on Powerhouse Lithium, have that down in the description. Try to catch up on comments here. Yeah, it would be interesting to see, 16-inch units, the NBTs, things like that. You might see a shift. I definitely think this limits NBT a little bit in the game. Obviously 16. I mean, you could run 3 16s, right? I still think you'll see 16 inches at the dash potentially, where they'll run a single unit there, and then you're going to probably see some combination of like 3 12s to go with it up front. I agree, Darius. Regardless of tournaments, I think the cat's out of the bag for recreational anglers. I think that you're still going to see that for sure. And in the end, the loudest critics like Aaron S. and others will have their opinions. So hopefully, Aaron, you are tuning in the NPFL and become their biggest fan. What's up, Andrew? You think pros should be co's? Got it, AJ. It'll be interesting. I think this could be a good move for the NPFL. It'll be interesting to see how it shakes out for them. And we'll see if the people that are the most vocal are they the squeaky vocal minority, or is there really a lot of fans that really feel that way? And I think we'll find out soon enough. Thanks, Carol, for the reminder on hitting the like. You know, I honestly think there's something to be said. Like, if you really just want to learn more about fishing and fish behavior and bait fish and movements, I would be a big proponent of, you know, upgrading your sonar and putting it on a small craft versus investing in a really big fancy fiberglass boat. I think you learn more with a LVS 32 or an active target 1 on a smaller older boat than you would on buying a big fancy boat. Yeah, before definitely I was watching a little bit of the BTL. Never like going up against Maddie. But this was the night that I had time to go. So no surprise that Randy couldn't figure out how to work StreamYard when he got there. Bobby asks, how much influence do you think Randy had on this movement? Um, I don't think Randy honestly had that much. Maybe some. He maybe fueled some of the vocal minority, but I mean, I don't think Bassmaster is tuning into Randy Blockett's channel to see what he thinks. I'd really hope to see that Randy Blockett is applying to the NPFL and put his money where his mouth is. But I mean, he applauded them. He made a whole video about it. I didn't watch it, but I heard about it. And I mean, he should be running, if the Toyotas, which is what he's been fishing, don't do any changes, he should be knocking on the NPFL's door. Or he might just be enjoying the cush life that YouTube has provided him with all his controversial and click titles. So that's a good question, Top Toad. So like I think you're asking basically a turret that's connected to your trolling motor, like a mega lie or a mega spot or a mega target lock or target lock. I guess you'd have to get that clarification. I guess that would be maybe in the approved tech, but that is one good question I don't have the answer to, Rex. It does, if you do the math, it seems like the 55 does cater to the Humminbird and the Apex. But listen to James Hall, maybe it was just more of a. I could also see where like they had their whatever 9 or 12 person committee and a bunch of people saying we want 60 and a bunch of people saying we want 50, and they said, well, we'll meet in the middle. Well, as a concession, maybe 55. So maybe there's some truth that they're considering Humminbird as a big sponsor, and how does that work for their 13-inch units? Or it could have been just a simple, hey, it's halfway between 50 and 60. I do think this is like the most logical thing, Phil. I think Livescope is kind of out of the box. Pandora's box has been opened. I don't think putting it back. Yeah, Aaron, that definitely. I mean, obviously the crappie breaks and the other manufacturers of that definitely got a little bit of block here, but NPT definitely. Not saying it's impossible, but you got to run another unit. So, I mean, you could have a Garmin at the console that runs your live scope, and then you mirror it up front. So you could use the rear one to run 2D or mapping or whatever you run for your Garmin in the back, and then make the switch when you go up front and then put it on the live scope. So, I mean, there's probably some workarounds for MBT, but it's a big investment to put a 22-inch MBT if you have a 55-inch limit. I'm ready. I mean, the scope will be on at the Bassmaster Open in lacrosse, but I'm hoping that I don't have to lean on scope as much as I did at St. Clair and Leach, Mr. Shaver. Yeah, YouTube, because they didn't really mention the opens, and I think that's because we're going to hear some new announcements yet on the opens, the EQs, and things like that for 2025. So I think when they release their new plans for the EQs and the opens, then they will apply these rules or not apply these rules to which ones they don't. So I think that's why they didn't specifically talk about the opens in their press releases, because I think there's some changes coming to the opens and the EQs, and then at that time they'll say whether the tech applies or doesn't apply. That's a good question. Will Bass Nation see the changes? I think at some point, at the national championship, it would probably, because that's a qualifying term for the classic, and typically what Bass has done over the years is said that any path to the classic or the elites typically mimics their rules. So I would assume we'll see something at the Bass Nation. I don't know if it'll roll all the way down to the qualifiers, but I would bet the national championship has something. And it'll be interesting to see how they enforce this, because obviously there's going to be, you know, and I guess the other thing that wasn't clear in the Bass release was, is that only during tournament competition? Can they have multiple units on um, for practice? So could an angler have two? Can they even have a perspective and a live unit? One as a backup mounted so they could plug it in if they needed to. They just have to disconnect them. Could they have extra units that aren't powered in their boat? It'll be interesting to see how they how do they really enforce it? Are they just going to lock it out like they did in that Lake Lanier tournament? So it'll be interesting to see how that's done. And like when they come down to the Bass Nation, would you have to re-rig your boat? Do you have to take units off? Can you just unpower them and unlock them? Or I'm interested to see. Darren, if you ask this question, it's not even worth justifying a response. Yeah. Counterculture is the loudest, but typically they're always not the majority. I've learned a lot of things Livescope, Aaron. You learn where fish are, whether they're suspending. You see how bait fish are positioned. I learned a lot about how my bait reacts in the water, how long it takes to count something down based on the speed you retrieve it, how fast it comes up, or whether it stays down in that depth zone. When you snap a tube or a jig, how high does it really come off the bottom? How deep do your crankbaits really get on certain pound lines? There's a lot of stuff that you can learn from Livescope beyond staring at a fish and casting at it. Do you think there'll be a large number of fishermen leave and join the NPFL? I wouldn't say large. I think you may see a couple more anglers, because NPFL has made it pretty clear that they try not to schedule the Elite Series and they try not to schedule over the BPT to allow anglers to fish multiple leagues. So, I would sure hope some of the most vocal anglers like Matt Heron and Clark Wentland and the guy from Wisconsin, can't think of his name, Caleb Kufal. I hope they put their money where their mouth is and go fish the NPFL on top of the Elite Series. Your target lock was allowed. Okay. So that you believe that will be going forward or just in the Bass Nation? Yeah. Way to use that 1.5 times, Frank. Does the screen size give unfair advantage to younger anglers because the older you get, the more sight issues we tend to have? Well, I think with 55 inches, you can run a 16 for your live scope, which I don't think anybody needs anything bigger than a live scope. But then you just might have to go to smaller for your mapping, or run less units at the back, or more modest, right? You can still run 3/16s and be under 55 inches. So you can run 3/16s and a 7, right? You could have a little 7-inch for your mapping. I don't see. I think there's enough inches there that I don't think this is discriminating against anybody on eyesight, unless the people that really want to run the 22s. All right. So Bass Nation, no determination, but I think we'll see something. I think they're going to probably also wait till you hear what the EQs and the opens and how that all rolls out. Um, the total inch rule, Brian, was 55 inches. That's a good question from Bass and Meyer. Would it be legal? And we see extra mounts so anglers could move from bow to dash. That's an interesting. That'd be a creative way to look at it, Bass and Meyer, right? So like especially with like some of the units like Garmin and their cradles, you could have an extra cradle set up, so you could unplug your 16 at the dash and just snap it in up front. That would be a creative way to extend and leverage this inch rule. Clay says he's disappointed at Bass allowing FSS. Uh, yeah, attached to trolling motor, not shaft. So I think that would allow either a target lock or an aftermarket or a side pull. I mean, basically like a 360, right? The 360 comes down on a separate shaft for your trolling motor, but you wouldn't be able to have a standalone like corn, whatever they call it, like the turret that goes off the side. Yeah, and I think the other thing, Aaron, right? Like how fish react to baits, what they're interested, what they're not. And there's a lot of stuff. Um, yeah. So yeah, 312s and a 16. That would be an option. There's a lot of different permutations to that rule. So we could do a little unofficial poll here. See what you guys think here. What's going on, Cooler Lid? Quick little poll here. Did it not start? There we go. Let's hear what you guys think. Probably should have had them both. I'm gonna redo this here. Don't vote. New poll. uh, New poll. What's up, Jack? Mr. Bill? Yeah, I agree. Most sports have limited tech, so it only makes sense. It starts to legitimize and puts I mean, bass fishing as a general is a pretty young sport. You know, all, outside of the weird shapes of baseball fields, right? Like bats all have diameters and length of bats and materials and goalie pads and the height of the rim and like all that stuff. Golf. So it only makes sense. But other than that, yeah. I mean, I think this was the right move for Bassmaster. I don't have a problem with the tech. I wouldn't have a problem with not using the tech, but I don't think it's going anywhere. Um, It'll be interesting to see how it shakes out for the NPFL. It'll be interesting to see what MLF and BPT does and how they roll that out. There's rumors about, not allowing it in the BFLs and at the BFLs, right? Would you have to take the units off your boat? Would you just have to lock them out? Would you just have to put some kind of like cover on it? Like, do the co-anglers just police that? Like, how does that work? Because I feel like at the BFL level, I'm not sure what percentage of anglers that fish BFLs have, Livescope on their boats, but I would think that if you had to outright not have it mounted on your boat, I think they would drastically lose participation because anglers are not going to, who've invested in that tech and have already mounted and got their mounts and everything lined up just right, they're not going to take it off to fish a couple BFLs a year. Neither option, please. What do you want to see, YouTube? Cuz all right. So this I did not see this, but Jeremiah Shaber says Alan Gray posted the BFL Toyotas were not banning FFS. So Randy should be running to the door of the NPFL. So it'll be interesting to see if BPT does something creative with their right. Like, hey, you can use it one period. They have periods where it's the power period where people can use it, or the anglers have to choose which periods they want to use it, or can you use it in one round of the knockout, but not the other. They have some opportunities with their format. Now, the thing is, like, if BPT does something, will they stick to it, or will they be flip flopping a year? NPFL seems pretty committed that they are going to be ride or die with this decision. I mean, Kyle, I don't think it does. I think it just gives you more information to make those decisions even faster and quicker. It the whole notion that you just throw out everything you knew about bass fishing, drop your trolling motor in the water and catch them and find them. I don't think that's true at all. I don't think it throws away. If you listen to people like Jake, I mean, like Drew Gill and some of these other young anglers, they understand just as much as you ever did about seasonal movements and where bass position and things like that. It's an efficiency tool, 100%, Jeremiah. Um, it did sound like Bass was still working on the decision up until I think they've definitely had their. I think they wanted to wait till after the season. I think they had their decision made towards the end of the season, if I had to guess. I mean, doesn't the cold front get fish fired up in the late summer, fall, Dustin? I'm kind of hoping it puts the fish on the move on lacrosse with this little cool snap. Either way, I'm looking forward to fishing lacrosse. I, I did look at the 10-day forecast. Did it change again? I mean, I think we're having a little cool spell going into the weekend, but then it's going to be pretty warm during the tournament. I think that's what I remember seeing. Cool nights, get the fish on the move. We definitely have some cooler overnight temps though for the tournament, right? But come tournament time, it's going to be pretty warm. Looks like, yeah. But we'll be wearing the bibs for practice the first couple days in the mornings. That's for sure. So Jeremiah, I assume this means that you've gotten into the lacrosse tournament? Yes? Are you one of the locals that got in? Oh, goody. Matt Pangrak DM me the other night. We were chatting. He's like, I'm not going to lacrosse, have fun. I was like, oh, you're the reason that all these locals are getting in. Yeah, we'll have what, a low of 41 on Friday, a low of 48 on Saturday. So, but yeah, these northern fish, they like that, Dustin. You're gonna need a counselor. Well, if your biggest role model, Ben Milliken, doesn't fish the elites next year, like he's talking about, Clay, then that'll be easier for you. Yeah. So next week we'll see. Kevin had decent Wi-Fi at his place, so I might be able to pull off a Wednesday live stream pre-tournament next week. Looking forward to that. Hopefully the Vermilion video comes out soon. I got a couple other videos ready for next week. Um, but yeah, I guess the Bassmaster thing is about what I expected it to be. You know, some of the details that we didn't know. I mean, we heard brakes might be going away. We didn't know exactly where the inch limit was going to land. We heard one transducer, we heard two transducers. So now we have the details. I think the way they set it up with the approved and unapproved list makes sense. And I think that's smart going forward to be able to adapt. Whereas, like NPFL, I hope it works out for them. But if they're not right with their decision, there's really no coming back from what they did. Right? Like, if this doesn't bring the boys to the yard, uh, flip flopping back like MLF will bury them. So we'll see on that. YouTube cause wonder if sponsorship money is lessened and or goes away. Are you talking about for Bassmaster or specifically what? Yeah. Either way, no matter what MLF does, they're going to get bashed for it. Just the way the bass fishing world works. Put the old now that we're new month, new September, new code. So if you guys looking to shop for Omnia, whether you buy those minnows or not minnows or other baits, save yourself 15%. Swindle said he's going to fish both if he can. So NPFL and Bassmaster. The minnow thing for bass. Are you talking about Scott Martin's about banning the minnow? I think that was a joke. So yeah, I know you probably got a secret burner account just so you can watch Milliken videos. Don't lie. Number one fan. What other news? What else is going on? Did I miss anything? Yeah. The minnow. How am I feeling going into lacrosse? I'm pretty excited, honestly. I mean, I haven't been there since May. I think you got out on pool 3 this past weekend and yanked on a couple big uns, which kind of felt good. But it's definitely the place I'm most familiar with out of the 3 open tournaments. But there's also going to be more locals in this tournament than there has in any of the other 2. So it's a double-edged sword. But it's a place I like. It's a place that I've done well at. It's a place that I'm confident in. So I'm looking forward to it. They do have, I'm pretty sure NPFL does have free viewing, but they do require you sign up for the Fix TV app. And they have some options within Fix TV, like if you want to watch certain anglers that are premium, but I'm pretty sure the basic experience is free. I could be wrong, but I do feel like them making that extra level of you getting the Fix TV app and all that stuff is a barrier of entry that they can't afford. I feel like they should be blasting their stuff out on YouTube and letting it fly, and I think that's a mistake. That's my personal opinion. Uh, yeah, I mean, kind of the gist of it, right, Jeremiah, is that this summer flood took a lot of pressure off the pool, so the fish are maybe a little dumber, maybe a little more scattered. Um, Not necessarily where they always would be this time of year, but basically there was a couple months where there wasn't tournaments, so maybe the fish aren't quite as educated this summer as they have been in summers past. You'll have to go catch the second half of the replay. Panger's always trying to cock block me, going right on top of me. Classic Panger. First, he's not going to show up at NPFL, or he's not going to show up to lacrosse, and he lets freaking Shaver into the open, and then he tries to stream right on top of me. The guy's just out to get me. That is the bummer. If I could have won Leach or St. Clair, I definitely would have went to the semifinals, Ritter. But before I forget, we are going to take a super quick break, and we'll come back for closing remarks.
Are you ready to reel in your next home purchase or refinance? Supreme Lending's Dream Team can help guide you through the entire mortgage process, from pre-qualification to closing. We have a wide variety of home loan programs in our tackle box, including down payment assistance and first-time homebuyer options. You can ask HellaBass. He trusted us to help finance his home. Contact the Dream Team today by searching Supreme Lending Dream Team, or click the link below in the description, or scan the QR code on your screen.
We're back. Thanks to the Dream Team. I've heard, rates are falling a little bit. So you've been thinking about refi a recent purchase. Could be a good time to save yourself some money. Uh, Give my buddy Aaron a call. Or, if Jeremiah, you win the open, you're going to build a new garage, you need to finance it. Aaron, help him out. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, Dustin, what those announcements are. I did not think of the unlimited horsepower. That could be interesting. I do know Rick Pierce has been pushing for that. A rig, double fluke rig, open up the baits. I think that would be a good move for them. Maybe they figure something out. The other thought that popped in my head, do they start, like, can we get tournaments down to 3-4 hours somehow? Make them like an NFL game where you can consume them in an afternoon instead of making them 8 to 10 hours long. Is that something that would appeal to the masses? Um, I don't know. So, but yeah, I don't know what. Now I sound like Milliken. How do I sound like Milliken? Maybe I'll have Milliken on, and then I can bring you in and StreamYard, and you guys can just hug it out, Clay, live. I did notice on pool 3 there wasn't much good grass. Now it's a unique little pool, and I was only in one little backwater, but there was some interesting things happening with the water there. I would agree. I think the 250 is just fine. I don't think we need to see 300 horsepower. I think that's a bad situation. I mean, golf is long, but what is it? An 18? What is it? Pro golfer. How long is it? I don't really follow golf, but how long? If you just want to watch your guy, right? How long does it take for them to finish a round? It doesn't take them 9 hours to fish or golf 18. It is really hard for the average non-fishing person to get into tournaments when the tournaments are 8 to 9 hours long and they're 3 to 6 days long, depending if you're watching an Open or an NPFL or a BPT. I don't know what the answer is, but somehow making it bite-sized, I think, would make it more appealing to a larger audience. But I also think, honestly, if you really want to reach a bigger audience, we should probably be putting more emphasis on kayaks and bank angling and having tournaments from shore or from kayaks because that's way more relatable and way more accessible. Any kid can pick up a football or a soccer ball or a baseball or a frisbee or get on their dirt bike and pretend they're their favorite athlete in their backyard. It just seems like it's a bigger jump to pick up a fishing pole and go to your local pond and pretend you're KVD. I think if you could grow and make competitive fishing more of a thing from a bank and a kayak, and then in the long run, boat fishing, but I think that would be a better chance. Where do they have bank tournaments? Is that on YouTube? I do think short tournaments are a thing in Japan. Yeah, less days could help for sure. Yeah, I don't know what the answer is. I don't think anybody knows what the answer is. And I think we're a long ways from getting there at this point. I don't think we're on the cusp of a huge spike in fans and money coming to the sport. And at that point, and that's a lot of this, I feel like frustration from the pros complaining about sonar and rules and tech is more about their frustrations of how hard it is to make a living and sponsorship and relying on tournament winnings. And I think if there was more money coming into the sport where more people were making a more healthier living and there wouldn't be as much griping. I could be wrong. But I think if you're not doing well, it's easy to to gripe and complain about the things that don't serve you as an individual angler. How much money does Johnny Morse need to give Taylor Swift? I mean, last year I was saying, hey, we need to get Taylor off the Travis Kelce reign, and we need to find her an eligible Bassmaster and have her date somebody on one of the pro tours. That would be the best thing for us. Koyoyo versus Taku bank tourney. All right. Yeah. Maybe that's something the content creators need to start, right? Maybe HellaBass versus Sobe bank tournament, Milliken versus Blockett bank tournament, Panger versus Johnny Schultz bank tournaments. And the content creator side, maybe that drives the future and grows the sport. maybe Deion Sanders versus Taylor Swift bank tournaments. I mean, maybe we really need to push the envelope of to get the eyeballs. But yeah. Like I said, though, I think in the end, Bassmaster, I think about this time last year, Bassmaster had their schedule out. We'll see how when they come it out, but like I think that will be the biggest determining factor on how much tech plays. If we see lacrosse in the Potomac River on the schedule, and we don't do a northern smalley swing, and we fish more natural grass lakes in the summer, uh, that will be the biggest thing. Because as long as there's one transducer, if they go to certain lakes, it will be the dominant pattern. There you go. Dion versus The Rock, Watson versus Boyd Duckett, Trim versus Laufenberg. People that really love each other fishing one-on-one bank tournaments. But I mean, they didn't Trim. I don't think they fundamentally changed who's going to do well, but I do think from a perspective and perception, it was a step in the right direction. Is Trey McKinney fishing this last Open? Is he going to be perspective watching a frog in a mat? You're saying he's already planning for next year. uh, who do we blame for inventing front-facing sonar? I mean, I guess the Garmin Panoptics was the first. So I assume some engineer at Garmin 10 years ago. But honestly, the technology for Livescope is not that much different than a flasher. And if you would have pointed a flasher out forward years ago, it's just painting a better picture. I don't have a name for you, Clay, at Garmin. The military, that tech probably, and Garmin is probably in tight with the military for some of their contracts. I did not. Livesey has a story on Bassmaster. Well, yeah. So I mean, they've talked about piecing together a schedule, but we haven't seen it yet. He deleted it, but it was on his Facebook. Then I guess I didn't see it. Nick Trim, are you going to send it to my Facebook? Yeah, it does sound like 2D pointing forward is kind of where the idea came for Livescope, and then they just kind of put it in a format that was much more easy to digest for the average angler. Clay, please write your manifesto and we'll share it on HellaBass Live in 2 weeks. Uh, oh, so it's just more of not a story as much as a post. And then he was on PTL tonight, talking the company line for the most part. Let's see here. Mr. Trim says he feel like he nailed it. Where did I save it? What the freak? Could have swore I just saved this stupid thing. All right, there it is. Mm, Wes Logan agrees. Let's see, working on it. Sorry. All right, so here's the story post in question from Lee Livesey. Literally changed nothing at all. No one caught a fish off their transom transducers, and no one caught one because their screens were bigger. Great job, committee. Yeah. Like I said, it's more of a perception thing. It's not going to change who's going to do well and who doesn't. It's more about, what does a tournament rigged bass boat look like? What is that cost of that? And now I could argue that the transom transducers made some people more efficient during practice, maybe in a few unique tournaments like Champlain, where you've got pelagic fish schooling. If you could relocate those fish faster in a tournament and get on them, but it would be pretty situational where the transom transducers really played in a tournament. It would be more about practice. And I think the transom transducers could be pretty beneficial, like practicing a place like Lake St. Clair. Are you just going to copy and paste Clark Wetland's email, Clay? Or do you have a different take than what Clark said? Zaldane is a bit of the Switzerland of the Bass Pros. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine Shaver having the brakes on in the river? Ugh, what a mess. Yeah. There's very few people that had the seven graphs and 5 transducers that this will slow them down. The Patrick Walters and the Drew Gills and those likes are going to be just fine with this new rule. And I just don't think a ban at this point. It's I don't know. I wish the NPFL well. I hope it works out for them. Maybe we'll have one league. If they prosper, maybe it'll change something in the future. But I don't know. I don't think that's going to move the needle. I think the people that are most adamantly against it are the minority. I honestly think the great majority. So I mean, when you look at the small pie and the bubble of people that are fans of the sport and that are actually interested in tournament fishing, I think most of them don't care one way or the other. Uh, it's the local minorities that are arguing in the chat because I think most of the fans are pretty casual and they just want to enjoy the action. Yeah, interesting to see if Shakur will be consistent. I mean, Shakur was pretty consistent even the year before the explosion. I don't think, maybe, I don't know. Maybe did Shakur have 5 transducers on his belt his rookie year? I don't know. Yeah, I do think that's ultimately, to me, is most of these younger guys are putting more time in on the water, and they're doing that time on the water with the new tech. And the new tech is a information gathering and efficiency tool. So they're learning at a rate that is so much higher and faster than old guys like Jeremiah and I, and who have real day jobs and families and only fish a few days a month. Uh, and these older guys that are crappie fishing and going on deer hunts and going to boat shows, and are just getting left behind. Kyle says, you really need more than 3 10-inch and 2 12-inch graphs or 2 16s and one. I don't think so. Like, honestly, I feel like I run 2 10s at my dash and 2 12s up front. So that's 44 inches. So I could bump my 12 on my front up to a 16 and I'd still be under. So that 55 inches is plenty. I don't think it's going to cramp that many guys' style. But like the Brian Schmitz that had 5 units across the front and 3 up front. So if anything, it's just going to save some of these pros some money. They don't have to feel like they have in this arms race. It is interesting that like the new, I mean, I'm not should say that some of these rookies, I don't know if they're just not getting the deals that require them to work the shows, or if they're not interested in doing the shows, or how that works. But it does seem like a lot of these younger anglers either aren't required or they don't want to. Maybe the emphasis is going away from the shows, but I mean, for me, I run a 12-inch Nick, and I just put a sliver of map. Do I need a freaking 10 or 12-inch unit dedicated to a map? The 360 already does disproportionate, like to a rectangular screen, because it's the ratio of it is square. So I just do like 75% 360, which fits the square, and then I run 25% in a map. I don't think you really need a 10-inch map up front. So I mean, I run Livescope and 360 up front. I mean, all this does is make some of the guys, it's going to make people a little less efficient, really. It's not really going to change how they fish, but they may have to actually pull their trolling motor up and flip into perspective mode, right? It's going to take them 2 minutes or 30 seconds. They're going to have to choose. They have to be more deliberate about it. They may only be able to look at half a screen of map versus having a 12-inch screen dedicated to a map, that kind of stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I would wait on that, Sean. I think we might see the opens and the EQs be separated slightly, so we'll see. I mean, I didn't have two 12-inch graphs until June or July, right before St. Clair. Before that, I had 3 10s and a 12. And before that, I made my first several national championships with a bunch of old school nines, like Helix nines. I mean, I don't think there's going to be that many units. I mean, we're only talking about 100 guys on the Elite Series. Some of them weren't even above. I mean, like Kyle Patrick said, I can run the same setup I had last year. I think Kyle Patrick had 3 13-inch units and one front-facing sonar unit, so he doesn't have to sell anything. Now, maybe there'll be a few 22-inch MBTs up for sale. Obviously, Brian Schmidt with his 7 graphs will have some extra units, but he's got a saltwater boat he can throw them on. 312s on the bow and a 19 Apex at the console. Can you see over that? So you can always throw your throwable cushion under your butt when you're driving down the lake. The Helix discontinued in a year? Ooh. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that actually potentially makes some of these new, all these guys rolling out their new boat videos next year semi-interesting to see where do they, 312s and a 19 like Nick's thinking, or are they going more balanced, going, 316s and a 12, or just, where do people put the emphasis? Do they put it at the console? Do they put it up front? And that's the thing. Like Brian says, he's got 3 9s and a 10, all he can afford. I mean, for 99.3% of us, it doesn't matter because we're not fishing the Bassmaster Elite Series, right? Most of us are fishing for fun. Some of us fishing clubs. Some of us fish some local tournaments, some opens, some charity tournaments, some team stuff. It shouldn't really affect you what they're doing on the pro level. And honestly, none of us should be getting super mad or super happy about what the decisions are because it doesn't really affect us. And if you're getting that worked up watching fishing about whether somebody's using front facing sonar or not, maybe you got anger issues, Clay, Aaron. I mean, I don't know. Sell his 24 Elite rig, so he's only going to keep. I mean, like that's the other thing is like, do you really need a new 34 every year? Can you just keep one and then not buy a new one? I guess if you're sponsored by Garmin, maybe you're getting them for free. But I guess if it bleeds downhill for the average guy, all these rules only help because you won't feel like you need 2 transducers and 7 screens on your boat to compete in a BFL or an Open or a Bass Nation tournament. So, if anything, this just brings the cost of being competitive down, which is a good thing. Is Lawrence better? I think there's a few things that Active Target 2, from my understand, does a little better than Garmin. I think most guys think Garmin is the most complete package, but obviously Jacob Wheeler doesn't seem to be hindered by running Active Target 2. And I guess in the end of the day, you know, what's with all the infighting? It doesn't really matter that much. Enjoy fishing, watch it, don't watch it, participate, fish tournaments, don't fish tournaments. In the end, get out, enjoy the outdoors, and have some fun. And don't get caught up in Randy Block's comments getting you all fired up and keeping you up all night. It's about going out and enjoying fishing and seeing if I can get some of Trim's lunch money this week instead of him taking mine like he did in May. So, in the end, that's what it's all about. Yeah. And that's the thing. Do it makes you happy. Top Tilt says electronics worth more than his boat, but he likes it and he enjoys it. And that's his prerogative. Why are you asking me what it's going to take? I haven't been on the river since May. To win? 3 days? What? Low 50s? Low to mid 50s? 17? Change? Get a check? What? 13 a day? I don't know. That's just a city at guessing. 58. That would be stout. I would be impressed if it took 58 pounds. That's 19 and what, a quarter a day? Clay, that's like saying you shouldn't allow NBA players to smoke. 'Cause I just realized I didn't upload last week's stream to MP3. So now might see a double MP3. Yeah, I think we're aligned, Nick. That's about what I was saying. I think I said 13. You're saying 13 and a half. I said low to mid 50s for the win. Where we are not far off. £22 a day would be stout. Impossible? Darn near this time of year, I think. Could you do it one day? There's an outside chance. Do it 3 days in a row. Pretty darn near. Lacrosse practice starts Saturday. The tournament is a week from tomorrow. Yeah. Did it quite take 16 a day? It wasn't quite 16. Was it? Oh, it was. Yeah. I should know. I was the bubble boy. I would say at least 20 guys dropped out from St. Clair to now, maybe more of the EQs. Because I want to say Kevin Rue told me at one time he was like 17th or 19th, and he's in. So I would say at least 20 some have dropped since Lake St. Clair. I know Clark Ream dropped after St. Clair. I know Pangrac dropped after Leach. But I guess we'll see the field list here in a few days. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard whether Stefan is in or not. I can't imagine that many Brugan MB. Is that Mr. Brigan was in the 20s on the wait list and got in. So it's probably closer to 30 people since St. Clair. Yeah, Panger's not going to St. Clair or Lacrosse. He said he's on the fence about Hartwell because he wants to double down and spend more time on Grand for the Bass Nation Championship. True. Not every waitlister maybe put their money in. You're not going to Hartwell, huh? You don't want to go chase herring chasers and drive to South Carolina? What's up, Gabe? I will say overall, I'm impressed with the numbers of co's we've had in the Division 3. I think that bodes well for seeing more tournaments up here in the Upper Midwest. So that's good. I wish I had time to go to Grand. It's something that's going to be in the cards. All right. This is last call for questions here. Kyle says Bass needs to have a camera on Hella every day so you can watch him live. I just need to catch him and be there on day 3. That's what needs to happen, Kyle. Are you having a private conversation with Nick now, Shaver? All right. Well, I think I'm going to try to wrap this up early, get the podcast out. Hope you enjoyed it. If you missed my opening statement, you can go back and watch the beginning of this. Enjoy. I am not going to pool 16 for the regional. I haven't fished any BFLs. But maybe next year I'll have more time to fish the BFLs if I don't fish the opens. And now that I'm in the Bass Nation, I believe for 2025, I don't have to fish qualifiers. So maybe I can fish classic bass or fish the BFLs. But otherwise, see you around town, Mr. Shaver, Mr. Trim, others. And hopefully make the Visor gang proud at lacrosse. As always, here to help you guys catch more big bass, suck less.